Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Friday, June 6th, 2025. This is The Excerpt. Today, Musk and Trump take their feud to a new level, plus details on this week's travel ban. And let's talk about invasive ants. Elon Musk and President Donald Trump's beef reached a new level of personal jabs yesterday. I caught up with USA Today domestic security correspondent Josh Meyer for a look at their ramped-up feud. Hello, sir.
How's it going, Taylor?
Good, Josh. Thanks for hopping on this. So, we've been keeping a close eye on this alliance between Trump and Musk for weeks, and now this relationship really seems to be blowing up. What's the latest as Trump threatens to cut billions in federal contracts with Musk companies?
Well, it's blowing up in spectacular fashion, Taylor. Trump has threatened to end billions of dollars in federal contracts that Musk's companies have had with the government. He's also seeking billions more in contracts through SpaceX, through his AI company, and so forth. And Trump, in one of his tweets during this escalating feud, said, quote, "The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts." He said, quote, "I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it," unquote. And of course, Musk replied, and it kept escalating from there.
Absolutely. We'll get to some of those escalations. He also responded to this threat over government contracts by saying SpaceX will pull back from some of its work. And, we know SpaceX does a lot of work for the government. What can you tell us here?
Musk said he's already going to be decommissioning their Dragon spacecraft, which does payload deliveries to the International Space Station. Musk has already taken steps, he says, to pull back some of the deliveries from his contracts, including to NASA and the Defense Department. So I'm not sure he can do that. I assume there's going to be some lawsuits flying from both of these guys in terms of this. But this is really like two junior high school kids that break up, and they're just getting very personal and very nasty, and they're just threatening, all sorts of things and won't talk to each other. So who knows where this is going to end.
Speaking of nasty, I know Musk has even alleged that Trump's name is listed in classified files related to Jeffrey Epstein. What did he say here? What happened here?
Basically, Musk said, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." So, yeah, it's really getting quite nasty here.
Yeah, well, Musk's various companies have benefited from billions in government contracts over the past 2 decades. We've touched on some of this. What would this Trump threat to pull billions mean for Elon's businesses if it came to fruition?
A lot of the billions in subsidies came in the early years. Tesla got hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of subsidies early on. We're at the point now where I think it's 18 different companies or entities from within the Musk empire are getting some sort of federal money. And it's not that easy to just pull them back. Trump is threatening to do this, but SpaceX delivers a lot of payloads to the International Space Station. It helps get satellites up into space. It's sort of interwoven within the fabric of the U.S. government in ways that would be hard to disentangle. So I'm not sure how much of this is actually going to happen, but I can say that there's people that are watching X, as it's now called, very, very carefully to see how much more they escalate. And I know that there's people acting as intermediaries to try to get both of them to calm down, but we don't really know where this is going to end.
As you write, Josh, the political battlefield is littered with the scorched remains of some of Trump's previous allies who picked a fight with him or were on the receiving end of one. So I'll ask you, could Musk be next?
Well, I think he already is next. The question is how much. So I talked to John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor and that was fired by Trump, faced Trump's vindictiveness too. He wrote a book called In the Room Where It Happened, and Trump tried to get it shut down before it could be published, claiming that he was using classified materials, tried to get him prosecuted. What Bolton said about the current spat, quote, "It's going to end up like most mud fights do, with both of them worse off. The question is how much worse the country is going to be off as a result."
All right, I'm sure this is not the last of this. Josh Meyer covers domestic security for USA Today. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Taylor.
We're learning more about President Trump's travel ban this week. On Wednesday, he signed the sweeping proclamation that will bar or partially restrict entry to the U.S. from nearly 20 countries, citing national security concerns. The ban prohibits travel into the U.S. for foreign nationals from Afghanistan, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Haiti, Iran, and many other countries, and he issued travel suspensions for a number of other nations. The White House emphasized that the ban targets countries with high visa overstay rates and that are deficient with regards to screening and vetting. There are similarities to Trump's controversial 2017 ban, which targeted several majority Muslim nations and faced widespread protests and legal challenges. Former President Joe Biden repealed that ban in 2021, calling it a stain on our national conscience. This latest ban includes exceptions for lawful permanent residents, current visa holders, and certain visa categories and individuals whose entry serves U.S. national interests, though those qualifications were not specified. The Department of Homeland Security is ending its controversial Quiet Skies surveillance program for airline travelers, saying yesterday that since its existence, it has failed to stop a single terrorist attack while costing U.S. taxpayers $200 million a year. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that the program had been improperly politicized and that under the guise of national security, the Quiet Skies watch list was used to target political opponents and benefit political allies. Noem said the Transportation Security Administration will maintain its critical aviation and security vetting functions, and the Trump administration will return TSA, quote, to its true mission of being laser-focused on the safety and security of the traveling public, unquote. Quiet Skies was revealed in 2018 by the Boston Globe, which said the program deployed air marshals who fly armed and undercover to thwart terrorists to track dozens of suspicious travelers daily. Lawmakers and civil rights groups have long criticized the program for potentially masking racial or religious discrimination in deciding who to focus on. Part of identifying suspicious travelers had relied on noticing behaviors like fidgeting or having a penetrating stare, which government watchdogs and some lawmakers have criticized in the past as an unreliable basis for probable cause. The Supreme Court agreed yesterday that a worker faced a higher hurdle to sue her employer as a straight woman than if she'd been gay. The unanimous decision could trigger a wave of reverse discrimination lawsuits, and it came amid a national backlash from some against DEI programs. The justices rejected a lower court's ruling that Marlene Ames could not sue the Ohio Department of Youth Services because she had failed to provide background circumstances showing the department was that unusual employer who discriminates against the majority. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit said back in 1981 that while white people are covered by the Civil Rights Act, it defied common sense to suggest that the promotion of a black employee justifies an inference of prejudice against white coworkers in our present society. But the law itself, which bans discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, does not set different thresholds for members of minority and majority groups. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Asian needle ants are spreading across the country. I spoke with USA Today national correspondent Elizabeth Weise to learn more about this invasive species. Thanks for joining me, Beth.
Once more into the scary creatures beat.
Well, I love the scary creatures beat, Beth. Let's start with the basics, though. What are these ants?
So the problem with these, they're called Asian needle ants. And the problem with them is they look like a lot of other ants. So there's kind of no way that you know they're Asian needle ants until they sting you. And then you know.
Well, all right. So what does happen when they sting you?
They are carnivorous. They hunt prey, especially termites. They love termites. They're used to attacking. If they sting you, they're not very aggressive, but like if you reach into where they live, they will sting you. First, you feel this intense, sharp pain like somebody poked you with a needle. And that lasts for, a couple of minutes, and then it fades and you're like, cool, I'm fine. And then 5 minutes later, you feel the same thing again, as if you'd just been stung, but you hadn't. The pain continues to reoccur in the same place, and it disappears, it comes back, it disappears, it comes back. One of the researchers I spoke with said for him, that pattern lasts for about 2 hours, but he has talked to people for whom the reoccurring pain can go up to 2 days. And that's not the only thing. These ants also, they can cause severe allergic reactions in some people. And in about 1% of the people that get stung, they can cause anaphylactic shock, which can kill you.
Well, in terms of how they got here and how they've spread in the U.S., tell us about this kind of mystery behind this.
It is a bit of a mystery. They were first recorded in the U.S. in Georgia in 1932, but they must have been here before that because 2 years later in 34, they were being seen in 3 different states, mostly in the Southeast. They live in mulch and kind of, loamy soil. And so it's thought they probably came over like in the root ball of trees that were being imported. They are originally from Asia. They occur natively in China, Japan, and Korea. And there's thought that they might have come over perhaps in the flowering cherry trees, the ones that we just had the blooms of and that are popular in Washington, that were very popular at the turn of the 20th century. And a lot of them were imported from Japan. And at that time, trees were transported with soil around their roots. We don't do that anymore, partly because it's dangerous because they can carry things with them.
Well, I guess you don't want like heaps of these in your back or front yard. What can folks listening at home do about these ants?
Yeah, there's not a lot you can do to prevent their arrival. They're now in more than 20 states, mostly in the Southeast, but they've been seen as far north as Connecticut, as far south as Florida. So if you leave them alone, they will be fine and they will not bother you. They're not like fire ants that will kind of go on the rampage. But they do like to live in mulch and loam. So if you're out gardening, or they also like to live in rotting logs. So if you've got a wood pile and you pick up a log, you might disturb a nest. They're a little hard to deal with because they don't lay pheromone trails. Most ants lay a pheromone trail, and so you can see where the nest is, you follow it back, and two, you can disrupt the pheromone trail and stop them. These don't, and so you have to look to see where their nest is, and then you can put out bait. Protein bait works really well that will kill off the nest. But all the entomologists I spoke with said, don't try and do just widespread spraying because it's not going to work, because they're underground and you'll kill a lot of things that you want in your garden and you probably won't kill the ants.
And they are invasive, right? These ants, Beth. What have they done ecologically?
I mean, that's the other problem, is that like a lot of invasive species, when they show up someplace where they did not evolve, they outcompete other native ants. And it turns out they will push out other ants and they'll eat a lot of insects that would have been there otherwise. And those are important. I mean, even termites. You don't want termites in your house, but you sure need termites out in the forest because they're what break down fallen logs. And if you don't have termites, those logs don't necessarily break down as fast. Another thing is, this was interesting, a researcher who's now in Hong Kong did some work, and there are ants that disperse seeds. They eat them and they carry them away, and then the seeds get dispersed and plants and trees grow. And the Asian needle ants kind of outcompete those seed dispersing ants. The Asian needle ants don't disperse the seeds, and so they just stay where they fall and they die. And then they're seeing places where plants that should be spreading naturally are not.
All right, Elizabeth Weise is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thanks, Beth.
You're so welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. We're produced by Shannon Ray Green and Kaylee Monahan, and our executive producer is Laura Beatty. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio, and if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.